Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to begin the process of pulling the rocker panels and the pinch welds back down into their original position. Over the years they've taken damage due to jacks being placed under them, and I want to return them to their original position, at least mostly, before the rocker panel comes off and I start repairing the rest of the damage that's been done to them. Before we get started today though, I want to give a real quick recap on the damage, why I want to do it in this order, and then also how I'm going to go about pulling them back down. Okay, quick recap of the damage that has occurred to my car. You can see here where the jack point and everything has been shoved up about 1.5 inches from its original position. As we move towards the back of the car though, you can see it's pretty much down where it should be. The rail for the most part is straight from the back end all the way forward up until this point that I marked right here. Then once we hit this point, you can see how it pretty quickly starts bending up towards the upper part of the car. So today we are going to start pulling that damage back down. So the reason I want to pull this damage first is so I can get it mostly into its original position, which is going to make repairing this rocker and then the inner sill much easier, as they're both going to be mostly where they're supposed to be in the first place. It'd be a little bit difficult to pull the rocker and repair it, and then repair the sill individually, and then hope that the floor is in the right place and that they all match up with each other. Instead, we'll pull all three of those pieces down as one unit, and then we'll remove the outer panel and we'll start repairing the rust and the other damage. All right, quick overview of how I'm going to go about pulling that rail back down into place. We have 3 body clamps up here at the front, along with turnbuckles to apply pressure to just pull everything back down. I have a 4th clamp along with this bar that I'm going to use that hammer over there to beat on it with, try to pull it down that way, help coax that metal down. You see the back, I just have some jack stands with 2x4s sitting on top, and that's just to prevent any localized force from the bar back there, just pushing straight up into the frame rail and denting it up. Additionally, we are going to have to go inside the car. As you can see, this inner sill here has a pretty significant ridge in it from having been pushed up. So we're going to use a body hammer. We may resort to a block of wood and a bigger hammer to help try and convince that to go back out to where it needs to be. Additionally, I will be using a heat gun to pump air into this entire area. I have a little hole here that we can blow hot air in through, get everything warmed up nicely so that metal becomes a little bit more friendly to us trying to move it. And then finally, I do have a torch. I don't really want to use it, but I get the feeling I might have to put a little bit of heat in this area to help it kind of get loosened up and drop back down the way it should. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started on this project. What's the worst that can happen? It can end up worse than what it already is. I don't really think so. So let's get to it. See, we've got quite a bit of pressure pulling down now. Our pipe's actually starting to bend up pretty bad, which isn't too shocking. So at this point, I think I'm going to start using the hammer a bit to try and knock that back down out of place. Well, shit.
A few moments later.
Well, lesson learned. Probably not. I'll probably do this again. Make sure I wear a pair of gloves going forward. Fortunately, nothing's too bad on my hand, just a little bit of a cut there, and doctors glued it back up. Nothing broken, not even any stitches, just a bunch of blood all over the garage. No big deal. Anyways, we're going to get back to this. Heat gun's already running, you can hear it. We're going to keep trying to pull this down, but now I'm also going to get up inside the inner sills here. I'm going to use a hammer to do some light tapping to try and coax them to kind of release that tension that they have from being crunched up in there. So, that being said, we'll get back to it. To just hit pretty heavily right here, trying to push that metal back into a more vertical position compared to the crinkle that it's been in. You can see everything's starting to come down, plus that metal's starting to move back the direction it is. It's really obvious when you look along the seam sealer, and you can see the seam sealer is actually separating away from the steel where it had been compacted from the steel being crinkled up like that. And then getting down here, our rail did drop just a little bit more, but it did drop enough for one of those clamps to actually come loose and pop off of there. So we're going to continue on beating it a little bit from the inside and using this little jig to pull on it while I hammer on it and everything else. And so far it seems to be working pretty decently. So let's get back to it. There we go. It looks like all the way up until about this point, we have everything back down where it should be, or at least close to. Which means, from now on, I'm going to be focusing all my effort up here, trying to get these pieces into the correct place, which I think is going to prove a little bit difficult as we have the actual jack point under there, a heavier piece of steel. And then we have other parts that are coming into this area as well as, so you have the inner sill, you have the floorboard, you have the rocker panel, but then you also have a another piece that's inside the inner sill. So it all kind of ties in right there. I think that's probably going to be our tougher area to get pulled out. But so far everything's going well. And so we're going to be moving forward and really focusing on getting this part pulled down into place. Well, son of a bitch. That came down way easier than I was expecting. Great. Perfect. I went ahead and taped the ruler up in place so you guys can really see what's going on here while I talk. So you can see the 21-inch mark. That's where I had initially marked for where the damage really started. And so we just worked everything from there forward. And as you can see, it all came down into place pretty decently. There is one spot still right here up near the 46-inch mark where I could probably do a little bit more pulling. but I think it'll be easier to repair once that rocker comes off the car. You do see a lot of like jagged edge here and where it drops down below the ruler. That entire flange right here has like a 90-degree bend in it, and that's what that is. I'll actually have to reform that once it comes time to remake those panels. But yeah, that's this side done, and we're gonna go ahead and get moved on to the other side of the car. All right, so we have switched sides now. Before I get started, though, I really quickly wanted to cover something, basically how I've gotten the idea to do this, or I guess the know-how, what little I actually have. So I spent a lot of time trying to learn, on the internet, whether it's YouTube or forums, on what I'm doing when it comes to metalworking. I am, in all reality, a novice. I am no expert by any means. That being said, this book right here, one of the best books that I've read on the subject. Actually, I take that back. It's the only book that I've read on the subject, but it's a very good book. It's called Metal Bumping by Frank Sargent. This is like the fourth edition right there. And this book just covers how to move metal, essentially, how to heat shrink metal, everything that you really need to know to, really start practicing. And so one of the concepts that this book talks about is when you're looking at a damaged area of a car, you try to determine where the impact actually occurred to the steel. And when you go to repair it, you start with the areas furthest away from the impact where the least damage is done, and you work your way towards the impact. And as you do that, it will essentially take care of 90% of the issues from the actual impact area. And so that was my approach on the other side of the car. It worked really well. In fact, it worked so good once I got to the front of the car up in this area. I mean, it really wasn't a ton of work to get it pulled back into the correct area, or to get it pulled back into the place it should have been. And so, just to show you guys on the car itself, what that translates to is your impact area is up here where where your jacks or whatever had, fucked the car up. And way back here, this is what the book would call indirect damage, right? So you have direct, where something hit. You have your indirect, which is just the result of this steel up here being misformed or being damaged, right? And so when you go to repair it, you're going to start back here and you're going to slowly move this steel all back into its original position. And as you work your way forward, just like happened with the other side, as I start pulling this back into its original place, it starts pulling all this stuff back down into its place as well. As the closer I work forward, the more of an effect it has on pulling it down. By the time I get all the way up here, it's mostly pulled down into place already for me. And so that's how I've been approaching this project. If any of you guys are interested in metalworking, I do suggest that book. I think it's a great book. Definitely helped me out quite a bit in understanding how metal works. Like I said, I am no expert. However, it has been helpful to me learning what little I do know about the subject. So now that spiel is over, I'm going to go ahead and start getting this side pulled down. Okay, to get this side pulled down, the first thing I have to do is take a pair of pliers or something and actually bend this steel straight down so I can get the clamps on it in the first place. Right now it's completely laid over to the side and I can't get a clamp on it at all. Gives you guys an idea of how bad this side is as well. Not quite as bad as the other side. We have about 1 inch of a gap here though, which isn't as drastic as the other side. But just trying to mark it here so I know where the damage really starts. That way I know, I need to start pulling actually up in this area versus all the way back down here. So just like the other side, block of wood and a hammer, little persuasion to get this to straighten out a little bit and drop down. I realized in about 2 hits on the other side with the body hammer, it just wasn't going to happen with that. So I opted to go for the block of wood and a bigger hammer. And that really helps it move out and get more vertical. So I don't really think I need to do much more up inside the car itself. I'm just going to go back to the bottom and I keep pulling it down using the turnbuckles and that spare chassis clamp I got down there. So as you can see, everything's pretty much down where it should be. You do see some gaps in here that are about like 1/8 of an inch or so, maybe a little more than that. But what that is actually the flange itself has that 90-degree flange that kind of runs inwards towards the inside of the car. That's all bent up, whereas when you look at other areas that are low, it's all bent straight down. And so that's just a lot of stuff that I'll have to rework once I get the rocker panels off, just like I will some of the stuff on the other side. But now that this side is complete, that makes both sides done. Well, there it is. We're done with the car for the time being. The rocker panels, floorboards, everything have been pulled back down to their original position, or at least close to it. Some things went well, some things not so much, right? Had a little impromptu ER visit there in the middle of it where I busted my hand open. But overall, not a whole lot of injury there, just a little bit of blood. Fortunately, nothing broken and didn't even require stitches. So lesson learned, try to remember to wear my gloves in the future. Probably won't. It'll probably happen again, if we're being honest about it. But now that that part of the project is complete, the next part will be to actually pull the rocker panels off the car. That way I can get to everything behind them and start straightening that out and then replacing metal as need be. Unfortunately, that is going to be in the not so near future because I do have a move coming up next month and I'll be moving cross country. However, once I get to that new location and I get set up there and everything else, I'll continue on the project. In the meantime, I'll probably be posting videos of other smaller projects, such as little projects with the truck that I have back there, maybe some more things that are just like garage based, like the Garage Talk series, something like that. But when it comes to the GTR itself, really not going to be able to make that much progress on it as I will be moving. So anyways, thanks for joining me back. If you're, thanks for coming back. If you are currently subscribed, if you're brand new, please subscribe. Please consider sharing if you like what you see here. That way I know to continue trying to make these videos and get them out there. So thanks for joining. Have a good evening.